ever since Jen moved in near us, it's like she's had an adverse effect on Val, and this is just the latest in a line of things that's happened because of her. Val thinks that I should just move on and accept that she just made a mistake, but I'm still pissed off. So am I the asshole? So you're just asking if you're for being upset? No. What? Of course you could be upset. What a negligent. Sorry, I would be pissed if this happened to me. A sister too, like somebody you're gonna see at like all the Thanksgivings and Christmases, and they live near you. You know you're gonna see her like on a daily basis, and then yeah, for your own partner to react like that, I would be heartbroken. This is hearttroping. Like I don't know if people expect me to laugh at this. I'm not laughing at this. This is like it's sad. You know, it's sad about this. No, you're not the asshole. Your sister's your wife's sister's like the ultra asshole. Your wife is kind of an asshole. She's an asshole, and you're not at all. Let's see what the comments say. Not the asshole. Both your wife and sister suck ass, though. Your wife could have reacted in a different way without ruining her relationship with her sister. She just didn't care to stand up for you. Straight up. Straight up. She's not being your woman. She's not being a good partner right now. Exactly. It's like she walks over eggshells with her and always indulges her and acts inappropriate with her. She set no boundaries with her. Yeah, I hate also a lot of people have friends like this, I feel like, where they're just completely different people with those people, whether it's a sibling or a friend or a family member. It's just like, who are you? And you don't recognize a person? Like, the immediate red flag for me.
My partner was saying sugar murdered my sweet little animal.
If it was me, I know it's your wife, but like, you need to seriously talk to her about that and be like, this is not, like, this made me feel this way. I wish you would have handled it this way, and like, just lay all your feelings out on the table if you haven't already, because that's just not okay. Would I be the asshole if I asked my wife to do more housework? This sounds pretty bad, but I feel like it'll be alright. We'll see. Alright, some background about us. We are not traditional at all, and both wanted to remain child-free. Slay. Love that for you. We've been married over a decade, and life has been great. That's awesome. I love that for you. We both have good jobs, and she likes hers better than I do. Problem is, she makes about a third of what I do, and her money is fun money for her to use. That's about, okay, fair. I make enough, and I don't mind paying for everything, but I thought we were on the same page about sharing household labor, which includes finances, managing money, food shopping, and cleaning, etc. Right now, I manage 100% of the finances and do about 50% of the other household stuff. Our house is always dirty because I work long hours and I'm tired when I get home. When I bring it up, she says she does half the cleaning and she's too tired. She gets tired not from her job, but from her hobbies she picked up, like cardio kickboxing at the gym and pottery classes she's taking for fun. Okay. I mentioned hiring a cleaner, but she says she's not comfortable with strangers in the house and will get around to cleaning eventually. Okay. I'm getting to the point where I feel frustrated living in cluttered and not so clean house. So would I be the asshole if I ask her to do more than 50% of the housework if she won't let us hire cleaners? No, I don't think so. Like, you're offering a solution, and it sounds like you'd be paying for it as well. I get her not wanting strangers in the house. I know I feel like that as well, but I pick up the slack with that because I don't want cleaners in the house. And I mean, Caleb and I both work our asses off, but I'd say I do like more of the cleaning because he works longer hours than I do because he has, you know, like 60 employees and I do not. So, and he cooks and I do not cook as much. And so there's just like a balance. There's a balance you can find, and this seems like this is out of balance right now, and she's not compromising. You're giving options for compromise, and she's just not having it. So it's hard. It's hard when partners make substantially different money. Then it's just like, okay, well, since I'm the breadwinner, can you do this? And then, yeah, that's tough. I wouldn't say you're the asshole though. I think that's just a regular like relationship conversation to have. So I don't know if she's the one making most of the mess. I'm just gonna assume she is, since you're coming home to more of a mess. So her not cleaning up after herself is a bit odd for me. I'm OCD as though, so it's hard. I understand that. Let's see what the comments said though. Not the asshole. Sounds reasonable to me. Yeah, I wish I had the expendable income to justify hiring cleaners. Well, yeah, exactly. Sounds like you've got different levels of mess you're comfortable with, so compromise must be made. Need to sort out the situation. It doesn't sound like your wife cares that she lives in a pigsty. Tell her to pick up the slack. She's working part-time, and you're full-time. She needs to get cleaning or you need to get a cleaner. Yeah, it's pretty plain and simple. Like, it sounded bad. The title didn't sound good, I'm gonna be honest. But you sound extremely reasonable. So take that to tell your wife. Tell your wife I told her. She's
Slept in a little bit since it's the weekend. Got my leftover Dunkin' coffee. Leftover Denny's. Pretty fucking good, I'd say. What are you guys doing? I don't trust you. I'm running.
She's being unreasonable. Okay.
I traded my evening wine for evening with mood.
Stop buying one if you're just gonna throw it.
I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but there are times when I'm on the internet and I feel like I've come across someone's personal diary, okay? And as much as I think I am a nosy person, like I like seeing whatever's unfolding in weird corners of the internet, not necessarily drama, but just weird things going on.
Oh, this is
As
Sims
much as I
4.
love all of that, there are times when I think, oh no, I have stumbled on a personal diary. Oh no, I should not know this information. And also, I think this information could not be waterboarded out of me. I would not even write this information down in a diary in case someone finds it. This is one of those stories where I'm like, why are you telling the world? And normally I'd say you should tell a therapist this, but unfortunately here therapists/psychiatrists are the whole issue. Now, if you've been lucky enough to live a life sheltered of Kendra, well, here I am to ruin that for you. I was on the internet minding my own business as usual, and then I found this story about this woman, Kendra, who fell in love with her psychiatrist. Now, initially, I didn't really think too much of it because it's a pretty common thing. It's also a common trope in movies/shows, you know, like the forbidden relationship, whatever. That being said, I spent an inordinate amount of time looking at this woman's TikToks, which at the time she'd only had 16, but as of this morning she had 19 or 18.5. She has a 0.5 TikTok thing, which I'm not even going to get into that. I watched all of these TikToks. I saved all of them in case, I don't know. And we're going to cover some of them, but I cannot put all of that in one video. So if you want to go see it, I'll link her TikTok down below. So she has already, since I sat down to film, she's already uploaded something else, okay? Part 20. So I guess we're going to have a part 2 if it comes to it. Anyway, so let me just put a couple of TikToks to introduce what's going on.
I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he knew, and he kept me until I had the strength to leave after 4 years. Here it is, part 1. So, I decided to go back on ADHD meds after many years of being off of them. I was on them in my early 20s to help me get through college,
No, I
and
just
then I went
have
off of them because they just weren't, like, the side effects were too much
basic.
over the benefits.
I'm
But then, in
not
my
sure how
late
to do all
20s,
the
I read
special
this book,
stuff.
Taking Charge of Adult ADHD, and it absolutely changed my life. For my fellow ADHDers, there's so many good things in here, and the biggest thing that I took away was that it's very important for ADHDers to be on meds. So I decided to make an appointment with a psychiatrist. I just Googled psychiatry in the city that I lived in, and I went with the first one that came up, and I got an appointment within a month. And then I booked a 90-minute intake, and I show up to the intake, and this man is my age, and I can't help but notice that he's pretty attractive, this psychiatrist. I fell in love with my psychiatrist, and he kept me anyway, part 2. So, in this intake, you know, I kind of clocked that he was attractive in my age, but when I tell you that I've had a lot of couch time in my life, a lot of therapy, you know, I just went right into it. I trusted him enough, of course, why wouldn't I, to tell him about my childhood trauma, my daddy issues, if you will, what I had went through, all of the relationship trauma that I had. I was 6 months sober at this time, but like,
No, I've
all
only ever
of
had
the
this one.
drinking and
This is like my first video game I've had in my adult life. My fiance got it for me. And yeah, I really enjoy it. see, what do I want Lilith to be? Fuck it, Lilith is gonna be an astronaut. Should Lilith switch? She will quit her. Fuck yeah. You go, Lilith.
And substance use I used to do, and he just listened and nodded. And that's the thing about psychiatrists, is that they're good at pretending to listen. They can appear connected, but that doesn't mean that they're always connected. So I just felt really seen, and I also told him, I was like, look, I don't want to be
Yeah, me
on
too.
stimulant meds. So he listened to me, and he put me on the non-stimulant ADHD med at the lowest dose just to figure out if it was going to work for me. I was in love with my psychiatrist, and he kept me anyway, part 3. So I hadn't ever seen a psychiatrist before. When I was on meds in my early 20s, I only got meds from my primary care physician. So I didn't understand how psychiatry works. So because he was figuring out my med dose, I saw him every month, and he just made me feel like I was his friend. He was really, really funny and cracked jokes, and told me he was impressed with my running that I would do, and yeah. So, of course, I loved the attention that I got from him. And it was in my 3rd session with him, because at this point we were all, that I asked him, I said, hey, do you mind if I call you by your first name? And he's Pakistani, so I said his first name wrong, and he said, well, it's pronounced this, but yes, of course you can. And he seemed so smug and happy with himself. And I know that that is because that was his first sign that him pretending like we're friends was working. And to be fair to me, I had only ever been to therapy before. I didn't realize that, it's important to call your doctor last name. I mean, I did know that. I did it with all my other doctors. But it just showed that the boundaries were blurring, and he liked that. So from then on, from my 3rd session on, I started calling him his first name. And then he just started turning up the volume on us being friendly. And he would ask me, for the first 6 sessions, he asked me, after the meds, he said, how's your bowels, bladder, and appetite? And I would say they're all normal. And then he would ask me any thoughts of harm. And apparently that's pretty common for psychiatry to ask those questions. And then on our 6th session, when things were really, the chemistry was starting to be there before, I didn't realize it. I was like, oh, this man's just friendly. And he said, I have to ask this because it's a special interest of mine. But is there any thoughts of harm? I was special to him. And I said, no thoughts of harm. And he didn't ever ask me a clinical question again. He stopped asking me about my bladder, bowels, and appetite, and he stopped asking me about thoughts of harm. So to me, I would just show up, and he was like a therapy appointment every
10 out of 10 friends say you have to go to that wing place, and that pizza shop, and that noodle spot.
Okay, so remember that as of now, this story has 20 parts, and by the time I post, it'll probably be 50. Based on this introduction to Kendra, there are a lot of things to be taken into account. Now, I will say, first and foremost, there are no good people in this story, in my opinion. Taking what she says with the benefit of the doubt, because if we're not going to believe her on anything by default, there's no point of listening to the story. There is no one in this story, not the psychiatrist nor the side characters, who are decent people. Everyone is terrible in their own way, if you ask me. So keep that in mind. That's my opinion. You can make yours at the end, but I'm just saying there's no one I definitely side with here. It's not that kind of story. This is where my red flags started going up for Kendra. It is very obvious to me that the way in which she was visiting the psychiatrist kind of from the get-go seems off in mindset. What do I mean by that? When I went to the psychiatrist, the same way that when I went to therapy, you are paying a person as a doctor. And granted, you're having a different type of closeness than what you'd have with the general practitioner, because you're probably not going to tell your general practitioner about your last relationship that was devastating or whatever the case may be. So there's a closer relationship in the sense of what you share, sure. But other than that, you need to remember they are the doctor and they are paid to be there. They have never and will never be your friend unless you're no longer a patient and you guys hang out outside. Otherwise, there's no reason to believe they would be your friend. And I don't like drawing this parallel, but this very much hit me as the guy who goes to the strip club and the stripper's nice to him, and so he thinks that she likes him, when in reality it's like part of her job is being nice. Very much the same thing here. He's being civil, he's being friendly, he's behaving in a friendly manner, because a lot of what you're talking about is probably heavy. Now, I will also add this because it becomes important later. I don't know how psychiatry works where this person lives. All the psychiatry appointments I've had here in the past were something along the lines of once a month like her, but it was all very like checking boxes, right? So they'd ask me, have you had any adverse reactions to the medication? All very matter-of-fact questions. I don't think I ever really went there and told them the same things I would tell my therapist. It never was, quote-unquote, that deep. So let's also make a clear boundary between what you tell a psychiatrist and what you tell a therapist or a psychologist. I think that that's also magnified by the fact that she would see him once a month. This tells you that it's a very different rapport, but she was treating it the same way.
So I was seeing him every month and just gaining more and more respect for him, because he would just tell me these little things about his successes and all of the cool things that he was doing in his life. And it made me fall for him, honestly. And he was really good at listening. And I mean, he's Pisces, right? So of course he's going to be there and be able to go deep with my feelings. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't extracting from them. Anyway, so I would beg him to let me see him every week. Beg him, because my therapist at the time, he was fine. You know, he wasn't a predator, but he was fine. He just wasn't doing very much for me. And so that therapist retired, and I got a new therapist. And this new therapist, who is a 75-year-old woman with a PhD, she was pretty helpful. So I stopped asking my psychiatrist, begging, honestly, to be my therapist and let me see him more, right? Which also should have been a red flag. But then I started focusing on this therapist. However, I would tell the therapist how obsessed I was with my psychiatrist, and she didn't do anything about it. She just was interested. She also loved stories about my dating life, and yeah, she also was getting supply from me in her own way, but that's for another part. So yeah, so I got a new therapist who actually helped me. She taught me CBT, EFT, all of these different modalities, and so I went back to just being okay with seeing Irfan once a month, while he was giving me these little breadcrumbs of making me feel special, telling me about his professional achievements, telling me about how he's getting international recognition, and it worked. I was really impressed.
One common word in the series is begging. Now, the way she uses begging is a little bit liberal in the sense of I don't really understand when she actually means begging, like now when she mentions that she was begging her psychiatrist to see her every week, because later on the term begging comes up and there's direct proof that she provides herself that it was not, in fact, begging. So I don't know if this is to be dramatic or it's literal, but take it with a grain of salt when she said begging. Regardless, it's not a good look to be saying that you're begging your psychiatrist to see you every week. She's already falling for this man because he makes her feel special and listens to her, which, oh shit, that's actually your job as a psychiatrist. You need to listen because you're asking questions that have very important consequences, like being on the wrong medication can make you suicidal or acting other ways. So yes, he's paying attention because that is his job. And being nice to you is part of getting you to answer these questions honestly and avoid problems. Also, it's just generally not being a dick. And that's not to defend this man because later...
I got a new therapist. I stopped begging my psychiatrist to see me weekly. And that is when the intermittent reinforcement started. Some sessions he'd be warm and kind and wonderful and let me in on little parts of his life and like be vulnerable with me or pretend. Other sessions, he would be cold and clinical and detached. And you know what that did? It made me work harder in our next sessions. It did. And it started the...
Do you want to make your videos more international? Simply upload your videos to CapCut and it will automatically recognize the voiceover in your videos and convert it into various caption styles. CapCut also supports translation of your captions into multiple languages to make your videos more
addiction that I had to him. 100%. And he knew exactly what he was doing. This man gives lectures on trauma and attachment theory. He used his psychiatric training to manipulate me and get me hooked. And guess what? It worked. In January of 2024, I was hit by a car turning left as I was going through a green light. And it was the night before my appointment, my next appointment with my psychiatrist. So I was like, okay, I'll still be able to go to my appointment on Zoom. I'm okay. But I did make an appointment with an urgent care the next day just to get checked out. I had bruising on my abdomen and a perforated eardrum. And the provider at the urgent care said, I do not feel comfortable treating you. You need to seek emergency care now. You may be internally bleeding. But it was 11 o'clock in the morning, and my appointment with my psychiatrist was at 2. So I decided that I was going to wait so I could see my psychiatrist and not have to reschedule because I was looking forward to my appointment with him so much. I look back at that time and I'm just like, oh my god, I put my own life under seeing him. I was fully addicted to him at this point. And you know what happened? Is that I showed up and I told him that I may be internally bleeding, and he didn't stop the appointment. He didn't say, you need to take care of yourself, go get emergency care now. He let me continue and just tell him about how much I loved him and how grateful I was for him. Because that was really what most of our appointments were, is me just like pouring myself out. Because he was so good at the intermittent reinforcement. Yeah, I got some warmth from him at that appointment. So that was January 2023. And I also told my therapist about this. She said nothing.
So pretty early on in this storytelling, here you just saw part 5, and we're going to skip forward, but this is all introductory and necessary so we can get to part 19. She frames him as a manipulator, a predator, and as someone who is extremely calculated with his moves, which granted, as a psychiatrist, depending on the patient you're with, it makes sense to be calculated. She's positing it as if he is using techniques in order to get into her head, get into her feelings in order to manipulate her, right? There is no part here that says that she thinks he has good intentions. In fact, this is all framed around the fact that he had ill intent and was living for any of the attention he was getting from her, right? Even in a prior TikTok, she was saying that he looked so smug, as if she was filling some kind of void for him, I suppose. Now, whether or not you believe that is kind of beside the point, because she clearly believes it, so that was her reality. It's important to note that this kind of behavior that she's describing here, this hot and cold behavior from her psychiatrist, is going to be a common theme the entire time. So in all of the further TikToks, when she mentions seeing him, there will be a kind of push and pull, I think she calls it, of her pushing really hard to basically get a gold star from him because he's being cold. So she tries so hard, she gets a gold star, and then he gives her some kind of throwaway compliment. Like at one point later on, he tells her, she's a coach for ADHDers, he tells her that if she weren't his patient, he would refer people to her. These are the kind of compliments he'd give her. She would make something bigger out of them.
January 2023, at this point I was full-blown obsessed with my psychiatrist, and my therapist wasn't helping me, my psychiatrist wasn't helping me, he was feeding it. And then I got a boyfriend, and at first my psychiatrist wasn't really that keen, but then my psychiatrist realized that my boyfriend was a lot like my psychiatrist. And then I started talking to my psychiatrist about my sex life, about tracking my cycle, using the fertility awareness method. And my psychiatrist loved it. He did never say, this isn't inappropriate to your care, let's pivot. Oh, he just let me talk and talk and talk about my sex life. And I didn't get too deep, but about a year and a half in, and I would send my psychiatrist these emails just about how much I liked him and how I was so grateful for him and put in a bunch of heart emojis. And this is really when he should have transferred my care, but he waited. He liked what I gave him too much. And so even though my boyfriend did not meet my needs, my psychiatrist and my therapist both were like, you have to stay with him. There's nothing wrong with him not meeting your needs. I'm like, okay. And my psychiatrist was like, he's perfect, don't get wrong with him. And what was perfect about him was he wasn't meeting my needs. So I was still coming to my psychiatrist looking for emotional validation, which he would drip to me slowly. So And he looked down and smiled so big in that moment. He smiled so big. And I loved it. It's so gross thinking about it. And then I proceeded to give him 30 minutes of non-stop content about my intimate life with my boyfriend. And I actually recorded the whole thing because I was so excited about it. But now it makes me sick. I can't even listen to the recording. I've tried to start, but it's gross. Any ethical psychiatrist would have stopped me and said, Kendra, let's talk about your meds. Let's talk about your care. At this point, my meds were stable. And I was still seeing him every month. Yeah, that was a rough time. And it was pretty much his Christmas morning. The almost 2.5 years of grooming me to get me to talk about sexual things with him worked. And he got 30 minutes of nonstop content.
As a therapist myself, I know how important it is to be able to have someone that you can talk to about your problems, to bounce ideas off of.
Yes.
So if you haven't really picked up on it yet, I don't think this is a particularly well-adjusted individual, and I don't mean that in a shady way, but I mean as in a person who takes and puts meaning into things where there isn't necessarily a meaning, and when there is a meaning or an implication, she is not picking up on it. So let me be clear. Example, you see your psychiatrist on Zoom. You find out that your psychiatrist actually has appointments in person, and they never offered it to you. If they're so in love with you, why didn't they offer it to you, first of all? Second of all, if they didn't offer it to you, it may mean nothing, but it may also mean that you're crossing boundaries all the time, because she told her psychiatrist on more than one occasion that she had a crush on him. She told him that she had a sex. So he was very aware, so it wouldn't surprise me that that's why he kept it on Zoom, to maintain a distance. So one thing she keeps claiming, especially in the later parts of the story, is that there's a chemistry between her and her psychiatrist, and she was just responding to the cues he was giving her. So it wasn't just a one-sided thing. It was him being very sneaky. So like she said she sent him emails, for example, and she doesn't really show those emails, unfortunately, but apparently they allude to thinking about him, or they still cross the line in whichever way you want to imagine it. She doesn't really show that. She doesn't go in detail. But she said that he wouldn't answer those emails and he'd bring them up in sessions, which to me kind of makes sense, because I don't think he wants to waste his time answering emails that she'll surely respond to, considering they only see each other once a month. And on the contrary, you'd probably want to face it in a session where you can talk face to face with someone and ask what the hell is going on, because that alone is very weird and very out of line. This person's credibility, Kendra's, in my mind, doesn't necessarily go out the window, but it's like her credibility in terms of how she's framing all of this is completely